Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this, the second in our At Home With series. At Home With is a series of videos that we're putting together during the coronavirus pandemic lockdown to try and keep people connected through the work that State of Mind do. So each week we're catching up with one of our key presenters or a member of the extended rugby league family and having a bit of a chat. So today we are absolutely honoured to be joined by one of the leading lights in women's rugby league, Jo Phillips. First of all, the most important question, which I'm asking to everyone we're doing the series with, Jo, is how are you doing at the moment?
I'm doing really well, Owen. I think that the pandemic that we're in and the differences and the changes have actually been an opportunity for me to reevaluate a few things and reconnect to my family. And although they're kind of there's a lot of apprehensive times ahead for me personally at the moment. I'm finding a lot of positives in the adverse situation that we all find ourselves in. An opportunity to reflect, I think, on how disconnected at times I'd become from those around, maybe because of work and other commitments. So for me personally, I'm doing really well and using this as an opportunity to look at my life, really.
That's a massive positive. Brilliant. What's your sort of rugby league backstory, Jo? What was it at a younger age that made you fall in love with the sport, that got you involved in it in the first place?
Well, I've always been an avid sports fan. Any sports. I used to compete in athletics, 100 metre and 200 metres, and that was my primary love, really, at a young age. But I discovered rugby league and rugby union, and I love both equally. But I think for me, rugby league is always, as I've got older, I appreciate the athleticism and the excitement factor. I find it a lot more of an exciting, engaging sport. So for me, very much like everybody else, I think some of the games that we had over the years, the eras of rugby league, the St Helens clashes, the Bradford Bulls and Leeds Rhinos clashes, they're such engaging games, and I just love the whole atmosphere that those matches created and the excitement. So for me, I fell in love with really the pace of the game and just the excitement factor.
So then what was your sort of career path in a playing sense, Jo? What club did you join, and how did you sort of go up the ranks, I guess, within the sport?
Well, I didn't really start playing. I never played at a young age because where I resided was predominantly rugby union. So I started playing rugby union as opposed to rugby league. There was no female teams around when I started playing. But I started playing rugby league when I was 36. So I was quite a veteran really by the time then. Hence why they used to call me old lady legs. But I think for me, I just missed the physicality of my former profession, and it was just something I wanted to challenge. And I thought, I'd seen an advertisement for it for my local team, and I decided that I've always loved the game, and maybe I could make that transition into participating and playing it. And that's what I did. I went along to a training session, and I was, it gets in under your skin, and I love the physicality, I love the camaraderie of it all, and I was hooked.
Lovely stuff. So tell me a bit about the club you primarily played for at rugby league.
Yeah, I played for Selby Warriors. So it was a team that was set up a women's division of it, and I joined relatively new to it. I think they'd only been going a few weeks, so they were advertising obviously for players, and it was a really good learning experience, and it was a good opportunity to make some friends that, we're still all friends, and I think those friendships endure long after you hang your boots up. But so I started playing for them, and I think I trained one training session, and I played the following Sunday. We had a friendly against Winmore Warriors, which were quite an established women's team at the time. And again, I loved it. I think I was a little bit out of my comfort zone. Union's a very different code, and there's a lot of differences in how you play the game. But bit of a baptism of fire, but best way to learn really.
For those watching, Jo, who don't know the story in terms of what made you eventually have to stop playing rugby league, talk us through what happened to you.
I were playing in a cup final at Featherstone Rovers, and I ended up suffering a stroke at the end of the game. I knew that I wasn't feeling great throughout the game. I didn't feel myself. I was a prop forward, and I think that most props will be able to relate when I say I never wanted to come off of that pitch. But I knew when I asked my coach if I could not go back on at half time, I knew that something wasn't quite right. The whistle blew, and I just remember trying to put one foot in front of the other and not being able to do so. I was escorted off the pitch. There was obviously first responders there because it was a cup final. They came and they said that we needed to get me moved because they suspected that I'd suffered a stroke, which was confirmed in hospital. So it was one of those things where I couldn't compete anymore. I couldn't play contact sports for risk of another stroke. So it was a difficult transition for me, a difficult period, because rugby league, although I'd only been playing it a couple of seasons, it becomes such an integral part of my life and my mental well-being as well. That physical aspect helped me channel a lot of my mental feelings into that sport. So I took retirement from that and went into coaching.
And that must have been such a scary moment, first of all, but then a scary period for you to, like you say, have to give up playing the game that you loved. What was it like, kind of making that decision to remain involved in the sport in a coaching capacity? How long did it take you perhaps to take that step?
It was a difficult time because, like I say, it becomes your life. Everything in your life ends up revolving around it. So you've got your training sessions, your game days, and then you find that your social life always involved your teammates. And I think once, after I'd suffered my stroke and went through the recovery process, I became very withdrawn because I felt like because I couldn't compete, I didn't want to be around it, because it actually felt quite painful to be able to see everybody training and playing and I couldn't participate. So I kind of isolated myself from it, which ended up leading to some mental health issues like depression. And I think it was just because I'd suffered with PTSD and depression some years before, I'd started to recognise it and realise that I needed to do something positive and proactive to ensure that I didn't end up in a very dark place again. So, after discussions with some of my teammates, an opportunity became available to become an assistant coach, which then I went on to become head coach. And I think that it was a decision that took a long time because I wouldn't have considered myself a great technical coach. And coaching was never something I really wanted to venture into. I liked the physical aspect of playing. But once I got involved in it, it was something that gave me purpose and meaning and really enhanced my mental well-being.
Fantastic. So it gave you that focus back, and it gave you a way to still enjoy the sport without necessarily having to strap boots on and go out and play.
Yeah, it gave me an opportunity to be around again, and I think that I fell out of love with it, not because I fell out of love with the sport, but like I say, it felt really painful not to be involved in it. But being involved in the coaching really reignited that passion and that love for it, and it really reminded me of what the sport meant to me in terms of how it had really enriched my life, and it just gave me that motivation back and routine back, and helped me reconnect with people that I'd probably withdrawn from.
Fantastic. So I'm going to turn to a couple of questions that have come in on Twitter, Joe, for you. We're inviting people on social media to submit questions to our guests during this series. First of all, the question on your playing career came from one of our colleagues at State of Mind, Dr. Alan Johnson, and he asked, who was the best player you either played with or against, or perhaps both, during your career?
I played against her. I'd have loved to have played alongside her, but I wasn't that good a player. Lois Vassell from Leeds Rhino, she was Bradford Thunderbirds then when I was playing, but she's just, I mean, she's retired now, unfortunately, due to injury, but she's probably one of the best women's players that this country's ever produced. She orchestrated everything when you played against her. She was very difficult to read. She had such an incredible rugby brain, and as you know, as somebody playing against her, she was very difficult to keep a handle on. You know, she's just. But one thing I've always liked about Lois is that she's always played top tier, top level representative rugby. But she's the embodiment of sportsmanship, you know. And at the time when we played against them, we were in a lower league. But she always took the time to you know, come and give some words of encouragement and positivity and a bit of advice and guidance. And yeah, she was just a really great player.
Inspiring opponent, amazing. Yeah. And another question that's come through regarding your coaching career. So this came through from Claire Austin Dyson on Twitter, and Claire asked, so you have vast experience, Joe, coaching in different roles at Selby Warriors, Wakefield Ladies, and assistant coach at Yorkshire. What was your favourite part of coaching, or perhaps your favourite role during your coaching time?
I think all the roles brought something, and I learned a great deal from all of them. But I think my favourite facet of coaching was the camaraderie and the interaction with the players. You know, I didn't start off as a coach. I was a player, so a lot of the players that I coached were friends. So it was quite a difficult transition at times to make, becoming, you know, different boundaries and different approaches to things as a coach than as to a player. But I think for me, the greatest thing that I took from it was the being able to nurture them, not just as players, but as human beings. And it was a role that was very humbling, and I felt very privileged to be entrusted with these women and girls. And I felt that, you know, that in some way I'm still in contact with a lot of them. And I found that for me, the nurturing aspect, the being there and helping them grow and develop, not just as players, but as individuals. And I find that was a real honour and a privilege to be a part of these girls and women's lives.
Fantastic. Another question that came through on Twitter was from one of our trustees at State of Mind, Nick Rowe. And he asked that with all the challenges that life has brought you over the years, what inspired you to carry on doing the great work for the rugby league family that you do now, after your career had ended? So, and I've just attached to that another question from Claire Austin Dyson on Twitter. She asked, what made you decide to open up your life so willingly, turning negatives into positives to help other people through the work you do with State of Mind, and how did you find that strength?
I think Nick's question first was really, like I say, rugby league, it's not a cliche to say that your family, you know, these friendships did evolve and grow into family. And when you meet other members of the extended rugby league family, there really is a unity and a closeness, that in a camaraderie that is very special and very unique. And I think after I'd suffered my stroke and had to endure and overcome some of the challenges that I did, you know, Danny Jones had passed away a week after. And I think it really made me realise about the fragility of life, but also just, you know, in relation to our sport, that there was many people that had endured some tough situations with injuries that had impacted them. And I know that for me, being out of the sport and knowing that I wasn't ever going to be able to compete again, it did have a detrimental impact on my mental health. You know, when you start to contemplate how many people are faced with injury or being sidelined, you realise that you're in no way, shape or form alone in how you were feeling. So for me, I wanted to really try and be somebody that could use my adverse experiences and shine a bit of hope or light, in that sometimes, you know, when one door closes, you know, for me, I thought that when the playing was over, that was it for me. It felt like it was there was a real finality to it, when in actuality there was another route for me to still be involved in the sport that I loved and had become such an important part of my life. And so I just wanted to kind of show other people that there's different routes for them, and that injury, whether it was an injury that completely ended their career or whether it was an injury that kept them out for a couple of seasons or a season, that not to give up the hope and not to lose the passion and purpose that they had inside.
And to Claire's question, was that tough at times? How do you find the strength when perhaps you're having one of those days that's more of a struggle than the last one? How do you find the strength to put yourself out there like you do now and help other people?
Because it's actually it's a dual thing for me. It's very cathartic and healing when you help other people, and I think that it can give you again a purpose. So for me, when I've experienced some of the things and endured some of the adversity that I have, there's always somebody that's enduring something or going through some challenges themselves. And I find that when you put yourself out there to help them, to nurture them, to give them a bit of care and, empower them to deal with their situations, I feel that actually in return gives you a bit more purpose and a bit more motivation. And I think that for me, it keeps me strong and it keeps me engaged, and it really does give me a purpose. I think helping other people is, in actual fact, you help yourself in doing that.
Amazing. I think it's inspirational, Joe, the work with State of Mind. It as it is for all the guys that are out there on our front line presenting, like you guys do, to audiences around the country. In terms of the charity and the work that we do, how this is Alan, our colleague. He asked, how did you first hear about us, Joe? How did you first hear about State of Mind, and what made you want to get involved in specifically what we do?
Well, I first heard of State of Mind through Jimmy Gittins and Phil Cooper, obviously one of the founders, Dr. Phil, and they did a session at Wakefield Trinity when I was coaching, and obviously I was profoundly impacted by Jimmy's story in particular, and it resonated with me, although very different. Some of the things he described really resonated and impacted me. For me, I never had a really intention of becoming involved in State of Mind as such. It just dawned on me that when the Women's Super League was initially established, we didn't have a support for these women in terms of nurturing and caring for their mental health. The RFL hadn't really put anything in place at that time, and I just through a few friendships and connections, I found a lot of these females were struggling because suddenly they had the league was a little bit more professional. It was a lot different to when I first started playing, where you'd pull on a shirt and you only played to chug a pint afterwards. That was your goal. For this had become a bit more of a professional elite league, and obviously inevitably that brought a lot more pressures on a lot of these players, and they were still working and combining the pressures of work or college or university, combine that with an increased training schedule and obviously a league that really, really encompassed a more professional approach. I think a lot started to struggle and found that pressure a little bit overwhelming. And I approached Emma Goldsmith at Rugby League Cares about maybe being able to provide something for these women to be able to access and utilise should they be experiencing some mental health issues. Emma put me in touch with Malcolm Ray, another one of our founders, and together we discussed it at length for several months, and eventually we came to the conclusion that although State of Mind was predominantly established as a charity support our men of rugby league and beyond and in sport, that maybe they could stretch that a little bit and involve the women rugby league players, and that's how really I became involved. Met with Dr. Phil, and he modified the model of the state of mind presentations and made them more applicable to women after we conducted a survey to find out what issues impacted women, because we do have we're primary caregivers a lot of the time, and that in itself can pose some difficulties.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit, Jo, about something that I'm guessing, along with the other presenters, you're really missing at the moment, which is getting out there face to face when you do work with State of Mind. You know, tell us about what some of those sessions look like, the sorts of places you go, and have you got any memories or recollections of particularly poignant moments that maybe come about at some of those sessions?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's you miss the interaction with, you know, I work a lot with Jimmy, and I miss the energy and the positivity that I got from working with him. It really ignited that passion that I've got for mental health and ensuring that we can promote it, and the message that we have, which is obviously, you know, talking about your struggles. I miss that. I miss being able to share our message, which is why this is so important to stay connected to people, especially now with this pandemic, where I think anxiety and other issues might be elevated. But I think I really miss going into. We dealt with went into a lot of schools and amateur clubs, and I always found that we were so well received. And I think one thing that always struck me was that how many people would approach you after the sessions because they could relate, or they were enduring something that you would endure. And I think for me, knowing that those people, you know, often took some comfort and strength from our sessions, it's hard to know that there might be people out there struggling and we're not able to share our message. So, you know, I try to stay connected with a lot of people via text and telephone and FaceTime, just to send them a message to ask how they are. Because obviously the work that we do with State of Mind is only further compounded to me how many people really are struggling with their mental health. One particular session that we did at a rugby union club, and it impacted me massively, and it really reinforced the importance and validity of the work that we do, which was we shared and we opened it up to some questions at the end of the session. And one young woman had the courage to divulge to us and her teammates that she'd attempted to take her own life a few days before, and that she was really struggling. Now that was a difficult thing to hear, but it was so important because suddenly she shared it with her teammates, and every single one of them got up and gave her a hug and said they were there for her. And that's all she needed to be reminded of, is that, and that's all any of us ever needs to be reminded of, that there are people that are there for us, to help us, support us, care for us. Sometimes we just need to let them in to our struggles.
Amazing. It's amazing when you have those kind of moments. I think doing the work that State of Mind does, it brings it home, doesn't it? I think how common mental health challenges are, and how easy it is for people to self-isolate in a different way to that we're currently having to do physically, but mentally it's so easy to slip into that mode of not talking to anybody.
It's imperative that we, one of the reasons I share, I never ever thought that I would divulge some of the things that I have, that I was detained under the Mental Health Act, that I suffered PTSD, that I would open myself up to share some of the things that at the time I was ashamed of. I was ashamed that I struggled. I felt very weak. But one thing that I have realised is so important, is of paramount importance, is that by opening it up, you empower and encourage other people to do the same, because they feel that they can. They feel safe. And I think the most important thing that State of Mind does, every single presenter has a story of adversity, But the most important part of each one of our stories is not just the journey, but the fact that there's hope. At the end of that journey, of however dark those times are, we are reminding people that the light does shine again. You know, and it sounds a bit cheesy, a bit cliche, but I know that it's important when you're engulfed maybe by really difficult times. It is important to be able to hear somebody who has endured those times say to you that things will be all right. You know, I remember I spoke to a lot of clinicians when I was detained under the Mental Health Act, but it was the people, what really helped me was the people that had experienced issues themselves, you know, the people that had recovered, the people that had regained their lives back, and those are the things and the people that changed me because they gave me hope.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jo. Just related to that support work that you now do day in, day out, Jo. It's one of those jobs you never switch off from, I guess, because you're always connecting with people on social media and other forms, even now during lockdown. So Kay Rollinson on Twitter asked, how do you ensure that you look after your own mental health, Jo, when you're supporting so many other people? Is there any advice you can give to other people who perhaps are supporters or caregivers who do a lot for others, but actually have to also have a regard for their own mental health?
Jo, that's a really interesting question, because it's very difficult at times, because each one of us has entered into doing the work that we do because we care deeply about other individuals and mental health and the stigma surrounding it. It's something that it's deeply ingrained in us, and we deeply want to help and support people and encourage and empower people to be able to get well and look after themselves. So obviously we're very deeply invested in it, and sometimes you have to really learn to enforce those boundaries for yourself. Because I'm a person, and all the other presenters are too, that you give of yourself, you give a great deal of yourself, because you never want to envisage or think of anybody else struggling in the way that you have. And so you put yourself and make yourself available to them. And I do that 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, if I could. But unfortunately, we can't. You know, we're not clinicians, we're not the Samaritans, we're not being able to be there for 24 hours a day for people. So it's important for me to have those boundaries where, you know, I make it very clear to people that I'll always help them and listen to them. My heart is always open to people if they need to talk. But I always have to, you know, inform them that I'm not a clinician, that I'm only speaking from my heart and from my own experiences. I make sure as well that I make it known that, you know, at certain times of the day, my phone, I don't have my phone, you know, that I put it out so that I can have some quality time with my family, some downtime, because I never would want to think of somebody reaching out for help and not being able to be there. And I suppose you have to, for me, you know, obviously when people are sharing parts of themselves that are quite painful or that they're struggling with, there is that kind of tendency to think about it and, you know, wonder if maybe you've said the right thing, or, you know, maybe as if you should have said this. But you just got to remind and embrace your own humanness. And I think that's what I have to tell myself, that I'm just a human being who's went through some adversity and some crap in their life, and I'm just there trying to give a little bit of light and a bit of hope and care to other people. But I am just a human being at the end of the day, and not put pressure on myself. I read a quote once, and it was saying that we should be lighthouses and not lifeboats, that we're not there to save, rescue people, we're just there to guide people through their own storms. And I think that's a really good quote, because I can't save people from their struggles or their situations, but I can hopefully shine a little bit of light and help guide them through the rough times.
It's a lovely insight, Jo. Thank you. Really, really good advice as well for anyone out there who thinks I'd love to get involved in something like State of Mind, but I'm scared too. I'm not a counsellor, I'm trained in this sort of thing. It goes a long way just being yourself and sharing what you've been through in your life with other people. That sometimes can be the most powerful thing. So thank you. let's just go back to the current situation quickly now. So we're in lockdown for the time being, at least. Tell me a little bit about what was happening in your life around the time that this happened a few weeks ago, Jo, and how is that impacting on your daily life?
For me, I was off 2 weeks. I had to cancel all my state of mind sessions because, you know, I'm always wanting to be real and honest with people. So, you know, I'll happily share this. But for a couple of months beforehand, before they started to occur, I was displaying some unusual behaviour that I wasn't even aware that I was doing. My wife persuaded me to go see my GP, who referred me to a neurologist, whether exploring if I've suffered another stroke, which has left me with some brain damage, or if it's some form of early onset dementia. But obviously this happened, and my follow-up appointments and all forthcoming appointments have been postponed, which has brought some challenges in itself for me personally and for my family. But, you know, one thing that I feel very strongly about is that, you know, in this situation, one thing that I feel is that we all have to endeavour to take the positives out of this negative. And for me, the positive for me is that I'm safe, I'm well looked after, and I'm well cared for. So although there's a few challenges, and sometimes, you know, I really want to get to the bottom of what's going on and maybe get a diagnosis and some treatment and start to feel myself again. That's just not possible at the minute. And you know, you've just got to focus on the positives and just focus on the fact that, you know, for me, I'm safe. I'm in a safe environment, and I think it's important when there's negatives to try and find those positives. You know, for me, that positive is the fact that I'm safe.
Fantastic. Well, listen, just from all of us at State of Mind and the wider rugby league family, Jo, it goes without saying, you know, we wish you the best when you do get to have those follow-up appointments, and we really want to support you through this time, and all those other people out there that you've been in touch with and supported in the past, I'm sure will echo that. So good luck with everything in the coming weeks and months. In terms of the day-to-day at the moment during lockdown, I know you've been particularly keen to remain active, to try and have some fun at home. Tell me a little bit about what daily life looks like in the Phillips household at the moment.
Well, I'm shielding, so because I'm classed as high risk, so I can go out in my back garden and that's it. But again, I consider myself, you know, again, very, very lucky that I have access to a garden. So one thing I've tried to do is ensure that we have routine. I think it's really important to anybody at this time in particular is to have routine. So we get up at the same time every day. We do a little bit of exercise at the same time every day. We have lunch at the same time every day, and then we have some downtime and chill out, and we do maybe a little bit more exercise, and we just spend a bit of time together, whether it be doing an activity such as baking or a jigsaw puzzle or whatever it might be, just that time connecting to one another. And in all honesty, you know, I mentioned it earlier, but I think it's so important, and many people I have spoken to have really resonated and said the same thing, that in actual fact, you know, this, as difficult as this period is and as challenging as it is, I think that a lot of people, we've simplified lives again, and for me, and I know for a few people I've spoken to, Jimmy Gittins is one of them, it's kind of enabled us to see what's important in our lives, and things that maybe we gave priority to. In actuality, we realise that those things aren't really, in the grand scheme of things, are important. And I think it's just, for me personally, it's given me an opportunity to be around my family, you know, and to spend some real quality time with them. And I can say for me personally, I've taken a lot of positives, and when this pandemic is over, and it will be one day, whenever that might be, I know that my life won't return to the way it was, because I'm going to make sure that I make some adjustments and prioritise the people and things that are important.
Amazing. Thanks, Joe. A couple of questions now from Twitter, if that's okay, to do with the current situation that we're in. Louise Woodward Styles asked, obviously, apart from the rugby league and your family, what else do you do to take your mind off everything? And what could we all learn from you during this enforced lockdown? And she adds, much love and thank you for everything that you do. Also from Chloe James on Twitter, just to add to that question, Chloe asks, what advice would you give to people, Joe, who are at home battling with their own mental health challenges? She asks if there's any tips you have for keeping the mind going, as that can be a constant struggle for people.
For me personally, I've started reading some books that are quite motivational and positive in their messages, and I find that, you know, when I kind of infiltrate my mind and my heart with those things, that my outlook is a lot more positive. So for me, some of the things that I found that helping me is I've limited the amount of time that I spend on social media, particularly news outlets and you know, watching a lot of the news, because I feel that you can just overindulge in it all, and there's sometimes a lot of propaganda and negativity. So I tend to focus on a lot of the positive stories that have evolved from and emerged from this situation. So, you know, there's a lot of things like, you know, Major Tom at the minute, who's raised £5 million for the NHS. You know, really looking into his story and looking at focusing on people that are taking this situation and creating positive and beautiful things out of it, and I'm really kind of absorbing that and focusing on the more positive aspects. But the other thing for me is ironically is a bit of solitude and a bit of time to just sit and just be still and be quiet and just let everything almost wash over me a little bit, really. And I just find that sometimes that really helps me, is just that time just to do nothing, to think nothing, and just simply to kind of be.
Fantastic stuff. And just to finish off on a really positive note, you mentioned in that last answer about kind of reading positive books and motivational type material. Jane Miller on Twitter asked, who's been the single biggest inspiration in your life, Joe?
Yeah, I've seen that question. It's quite hard, because I think I'm a great believer that people come into your life for reasons and seasons, and I think over the years there's been many people who've made an indelible impact on my life, and I will always be thankful to. But I think really for me, my biggest inspiration at the moment is, and has been for a while, is my daughter, Ellis. She's nearly 17. She has autism, and I think that she has taught me, you know, as a parent, our job is to teach our children, but she has taught me more than I'll ever be able to teach her. And I think the main thing she's taught me is to embrace our differences. Her outlook on life is unique and really special, and I think that she's my inspiration. She's the person that sometimes when you think a certain way, her autism makes her think completely different, and her outlook and how she perceives things sometimes, it's profoundly beautiful, but it also it teaches me so much, and I think that for me, when I might be feeling a bit low myself or struggling with things, just having a conversation with my daughter and how she sees the world and how she views things, she's enlightened me, and she's just made me realise that for all the ugliness sometimes that we see in life, you know, there's always beautiful things to see. We just need to look at them and not look at the bad stuff.
She sounds wonderful, Joe. So how old is Ella now?
She's 17 in May.
Wow, fantastic. So Joe, thank you so much for today, for giving us your time so freely, but also for being so honest and willing to share your experiences with us. You've had so many challenges to face, and I think I speak for all of us when I say you are one of the most inspirational people I think that State of Mind have the privilege to work alongside. So thank you for doing everything that you do for us as a charity, but also for just being the person you are and supporting people the way you do. I think it's truly inspirational, and thank you ever so much for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed it and got something out of the last hour or so.
Yeah, I really have. Thank you for doing these sessions on and giving your time. And one thing that I just want to kind of finish on is just to say that I read a quote in one of the books that I've been reading. It's a beautiful book, and I think it's just really important for people to remember. I'm sorry, it says, asking for help isn't giving up, it's refusing to give in. And I think sometimes we can misinterpret that asking for help means that we're weak, but it's the strongest, bravest, most courageous thing anyone can ever do, is to ask for help when you're struggling. And I just want to say to anybody who's watching this, if you're struggling, you're a brave person. You're a brave person to wake up every morning and keep on struggling. But you're not alone. And I did a Grand Canyon trek last year, and I always tell this story in any of the sessions. So sorry if anybody's heard it, but it was a 14-hour trek the first day, and I remember sitting down for her water break, and I remember looking up at what we still had left to climb the canyon. I said we'd been walking already for 7 hours, and I said to the guide, "How long is that going to take us?" And she said, "About another 7 hours." And I felt so discouraged. And at that point, we'd seen a rattlesnake, and at that point, I actually hoped that it would bite me so that I could get airlifted out of there. That's how much I did not think that I was going to make that climb. But throughout it, with my stroke, I have a weakness down my right side, so I was visibly struggling. And throughout that trek, people like Lee Greers, everybody kept asking me, "Are you all right, Joe? How are you doing?" And I kept saying that mandatory answer, "I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm fine." Once I realised we still had 7 hours left to trek, and you're fatigued and your morale's quite low, me simply admitting for the first time, even though I had struggled throughout the whole of the trek, but me admitting at that first time that yes, I was actually struggling, meant that they all came alongside me. I never climbed one step of that trek for the remaining 7 hours on my own. And suppose for the moral of that experience and that story and the purpose that I tell it for is to remind people that whatever mountains you are climbing in your own life, if you tell somebody you are struggling, you won't have to take a step of that climb of that mountain on your own. There will always be somebody to walk alongside you. I think it's so important, especially now when people may be isolating on their own, to know that there's services and people available who, if you reach out to, you can talk to. And it's a metaphorical thing for a lot of us at the moment because we are away from loved ones, but you will still not be alone in that climb, And I just want to say, if anybody's ever struggling, my DMs are always open. If anybody needs a chat, like I say, I'm not a clinician. I'm just one person who's climbed some mountains myself, and I know how tough it is, but got to the top with the help of others.
Fantastic. So Joe, thank you so much for your time today. I think that's been one of the most positive experiences I've certainly had working for State of Mind, and definitely in this period during the pandemic and the lockdown. So really enjoyed the conversation. It's been great for me because I've had limited time really to meet you in person so far.
Yeah.
Mind. So I look forward to, after all this is over, meeting you face to face and sharing some good times in the future with the charity. So thank you again, and listen, look after yourselves, look after your daughter and wife, and stay safe. See you very soon. Okay.
You too. Take care, Owen.
Thanks, Joe. All the best. Bye.